Holy shit. Creek. Ha. Well, in all seriousness, even though it's a very funny show, I must have watched like all 6 seasons in record time. I mean, the episodes were very short, and it was quite the antidote for these troubling times. Throughout, oh god, wow, this past month, whenever I needed something to watch just to take my mind off things, I turned to Schitt's Creek. And what I loved about Schitt's Creek the most, and there's a lot to love about this series, but what I loved about it the most is that it never took itself seriously. It reminds me of John Hine from Jump the Shark. And for those who don't know, when a show jumps the shark, it means that something happens, and then after that instance, the show may still be good, but it's never the same after a certain instance. And it's from the Happy Days episode where Fonzie jumps over a sharks, like sharks that were like had a border around them in an ocean. He was water skiing, and then ever since then, Happy Days wasn't the same. So hence the phrase "jump the shark." And part of what makes the show jump the shark is when, an otherwise, comedic show has like a very special episode, and it all of a sudden turns dramatic. And while Schitt's Creek had some dramatic moments, it never, ever, ever, ever took itself seriously. And there were heavy-duty dramatic moments throughout the show where it's like, people getting into arguments or like certain catastrophes happening, but it never went down that rabbit hole of, oh my God, this is going to get serious. Like for a second, I would think it would get serious, but then it would go right back to comedy. And I think it did that by design. But at the same time, it tackled serious subjects. Probably the most serious would be being an LGBTQ person, and how the show, for the most part, just normalized being an LGBTQ person. The David character, he... it was that saying where it was the analogy using the wine. I like the wine, not the label. But how his sexuality and his husband's sexuality were treated as a normal thing for the whole town of Schitt's Creek. Never once where it was like, oh my God, you're gay. And it would show like, an episode where they would be oppressed and they would have to fight for their rights. It was like, no, this is a normal thing. The only time it kind of deviated from that was when Patrick, David's partner, future husband, was coming out to his parents, where you thought, oh my God, he's going to be met with resistance. But then the parents were like, well, why didn't you tell us this, before? Well, what is it about us that you didn't feel comfortable saying? And so they tackled that issue a little bit. But then it turned out in the end, it was almost abnormal for Patrick not to come out, almost. But it did, the Patrick character did go through, the fear of it. And so that was definitely the best part about the show. It was just laugh out loud at least once every single episode. The acting, the cast, the characters all throughout, it's the sign of a good show is like when you're going to miss them when it's over. And I always felt like, oh, well, I'm not just watching Schitt's Creek tonight. I'm spending time with the characters. And, with this pandemic, I don't go out anymore. I don't see my friends aside from, Zoom, or, video chat. I don't see them because I want to keep them safe and I want to be safe. Because if I was going to, meet them in person, I would have to be at least 6 feet apart, wearing masks, and that would just I would feel worse doing that than not seeing them at all. I'd rather speak to them on video, or I do have a friend who visits and we see each other through, a glass door, so we can talk, but we don't, we're not in each other's physical space for good reasons. We're in a pandemic. So during this time, it's like, well, let me hang out with my friends in Schitt's Creek. So my TV is keeping me company, which, is okay. The vaccine will be here. We'll be here soon, and hopefully, we can start to get back to normal. Okay, yawn. Oh my God, it's 1:30 in the morning. So, I finished the last episode tonight, and then I don't really like behind the scenes stuff, but I watched the this one just to see everybody's reactions, and the show was ending, and just but I think from being I was an actor for a long time, and while I was never lucky enough to be in a long running television series, there was a sadness when a movie would wrap or a project would wrap, because you may not see the crew that much at all. And I felt that a lot with the projects that I did, regardless of what it was. So the fact that, Schitt's Creek just built such a following and such a closeness, you can just tell, just the emotion, understandably, with the cast. And like the most touching thing was that final read through, and Daniel Levy just, couldn't keep it together, and speaking of Levy, I've been a fan of, Eugene Levy ever since Splash. I know Eugene Levy from, mostly Splash and a movie called Club Paradise with Robin Williams. And the movie wasn't that good, but I managed to see it like 9 million times. So I really know him from that. And then all the projects he's done throughout the year. He's such a remarkable comedic talent, really a comedy legend. And then Katherine O'Hara, oh my God, talk about a legend. Eugene Levy and Katherine O'Hara doing the Christopher Guest movies. Katherine O'Hara in a movie like Beetlejuice comes to mind. Just what a just powerhouse of comedy, and how she played Moira was so ridiculous, but so funny and so endearing. Like no human being, at least that I know of, talks like Moira, but she was so narcissistic, self-centered. Everything was about her, but then, she had these moments of just beauty with her family, and you can tell that she really cared about her family, even though there was like distance. And same thing with Johnny Rose, how, they were just so oblivious to what their kids were doing. And the show really brought the humor into that kind of thing. And so just, and Katherine O'Hara's accent, it's like, who the hell talks like that? But just like the way just the affect that she had, and like when she spoke and saying the word Caaaaan't, like anytime she said the word, it was Caaaaan't or bebe. When she would say that, I would just lose it, and then and the costumes, every character's costume told a story. David's costumes were, just every outfit that he wore was like, what the hell? And then you had, with Alexis, the just the fashionista quality of her. And then, Emily Murphy's, not Emily Murphy, Annie Murphy's, the way she would talk, and you're like, no, and with David, the whole socialite kind of affect that she had down, and the way she held her hands, and her outfits. But then, Moira's outfits were just absolutely ridiculous, and the wigs, and how she called the wigs, she, her, and she gave like a human quality to her wigs. And then Johnny Rose was rarely without a suit. He wore a suit when he cleaned the hotel. There were some episodes where he didn't wear a suit. Like one was the baseball episode, but for the most part, he always wore that suit. And the fact that, he was so oblivious with certain things, and it's such a great business acumen, but he lost the business, and then the arc of him trying to build the business until he finally got the motel to where it was. But you saw the struggle with the Roses, and it was cool to see Chris Elliott as Roland. Roland Schitt as Roland Schitt. I remember Chris Elliott from that show Get a Life. It was a terrible show, but it was just so ridiculous. So that's where I know him from. So it was cool to see him in that role. Like Roland was so annoying. Like anytime Roland was there, it was like, if this was any other show, Roland would mess things up and then there would be a big fight. But because Schitt's Creek is Schitt's Creek, that even though Roland would mess things up, it wouldn't get too serious. And Roland just messed things up so many times because, again, he just wasn't the best listener. And I didn't know until watching the behind the scenes that Twyla is a Levy as well. So I was like, oh my God. And the fact that with the Roses, they Daniel Levy and Alexis, like they could easily have been real life brother and sister, because they kind of looked alike as well. Like Daniel looks a lot like Eugene. So So throughout the whole show, just getting to know the characters and their idiosyncrasies, and even from the major characters to the minor characters, it was just lighthearted. It was fun and didn't take themselves too seriously. I guess if I had to have one criticism of the show, it was how, and I guess you can explain it because, it was a comedy. They don't want to get too heavy, but all the characters, there was a happy ending. Well, pardon the pun, because David did get a happy ending from the masseuse, but it was a happy ending for everybody. Things just kind of worked out. And unfortunately, life, as we all have seen, that sometimes life doesn't work out. And I guess life is more fair to others than life is more fair to some as opposed to everybody. And I think my criticism was that it just every character worked out. I think maybe the saddest was Bob. Gwen left Bob, but I guess Bob was too much of a minor character. But as far as the major characters, Alexis and Ted, their relationship didn't work out, so that was kind of touching. But then, Alexis just, her career in PR started to launch. So she gets to move to New York. David and Patrick get married. Stevie, finds success running the motels along with Roland and Jocelyn. Their investment works out. And then with the Roses themselves, Moira gets the big TV show, and Johnny redeems himself in the world of business by failing one pitch, but then, miraculously he was saved by venture capitalists who happen to be breaking off from the bigger company. So a lot of it just seemed tied together quick, creating happy endings for everybody, and they all live happily ever after. And maybe because I am living through the coronavirus pandemic, I just I guess part of me wishes can something tragic happen to someone, and everybody seemed to work out okay. Well, except Bob, poor Bob. And hopefully Mutt is okay, because Mutt just kind of disappeared. I don't know if it was the actor or what, but he never came back after an episode. So, but that being said, that's a minor criticism for a show that overall was very good, and it could definitely bring one to watch repeated viewings. Now that I know what happens, and then just to see the characters again. Knowing where they ended and just to see how they start would be a fun thing to do. And again, just something to go back to when I need a laugh. So now I just got to find something else to watch. But very good show. It's nice to see Eugene Levy, such a just man with a comedic gift, as well as Katherine O'Hara, and then to see his comedic Eugene Levy's comedic genes passed on to his family, to Daniel, who just, you know, as a co-creator of the show. I think it was Daniel's show, and maybe Eugene, you know, kind of guided him with it, but Daniel created the show. So it'll be interesting to see what Daniel and the rest of the Levys will do next. So, and the show ended at the right time. I wasn't tired of the show, so it was nice. It was good resolution, and it was just, it didn't overstay its welcome. So that's always good. So, speaking of not overstaying the welcome, I think that's it for this episode. I'm going to talk like Moira. So, yeah, all right. So that's it. So, you can find me, where you can find me on Twitter at MMAM Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at MMAM Podcast. You can email me at MMAMpodcast@gmail.com. And like I said, and then feel free to rate, share, review this podcast. And like I'm saying at the end of all podcasts, we are in a pandemic. Knowledge is power. Please get your news from credible sources. Find a newspaper, subscribe, whether it's New York Times, USA Today, Washington Post. You can listen to podcasts from NPR, from BBC, and get your news and information that way. Listen to the experts, the actual experts, using scientific consensus to protect yourself and others from this pandemic. Wear a mask, socially distance, practice social distancing, wash your hands, and please get your news from credible sources that I've mentioned. And take care of yourself, okay? So I think that's it for me. Until next time, bye.